I got 6 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and call this study session to order. And I think we have some guests from the Humane Society of Southwest Washington. So let you guys, or Chris, were you going to introduce?
I'll go ahead and introduce them. We have Andrea Bruno, who's the executive director from the Humane Society, as well as Megan Dennis, who's vice president of strategic initiatives. They're here at our request to discuss the last year in terms of Battleground. We went to take a tour a couple months ago, and it was pretty fascinating to see. I think all of council has now at least toured the Humane Society. And it's quite the operation. And I felt like with the contractual relationship that we have with Humane Society, that we could have a study session and you could ask questions. We picked this time frame because they indicated that they would have the annual report information for the whole county as well as the city of Battleground in and around March, so that we can talk specifically about the animals that they've cared for from our jurisdiction. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrea and Megan.
I'm really excited to come out and share the story of the work that we do and the impact that we have in your community before, putting your trust in us.
The sheltering, am I on? Okay. Is that better? We look forward to telling you not only about last year, but just a little bit more about the contract. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to really explain and share who are we as an organization, but also what is the sheltering contract and what does that look like, and what does it mean specifically for Battleground. So we're going to go over that today, but we're excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for being a great partner with us for many, many years. So with that, I'll let Megan kind of start us out and talk a little bit about what is the contract and kind of set the stage for that. And then we'll go through a little bit more about the specifics and who we are a little bit more broadly as an organization as well.
And let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So I thought I'd just start by talking about what our animal sheltering contracts are, why they exist. Animal services is essential to any community, and with the lack of an actual municipal shelter, which some communities do choose to build and run on their own, then with the lack of that here in Clark County, we have contracts with each of the jurisdictions to fulfill those municipal services. We can do it at a more cost-effective rate, which is why this model exists. A lot of communities or cities choose to have this public-private partnership in order to fulfill these municipal services. Our current partners are City of Vancouver, Clark County, City of Washougal, City of Camas, City of Ridgefield, City of Battleground, obviously, City of La Center, and then we have 5 new partners that are in Cowlitz. Those include City of Longview, City of Castle Rock, City of Woodland, City of Kelso, and Cowlitz County. Do you want to talk a little bit about our merger just real quick?
Yeah, so some of you may have seen the news over the last few months that the Humane Society for Southwest Washington acquired the Humane Society of Cowlitz County, as it was formerly called. That organization been around for 50 years, serving most of and all of Cowlitz County. Their board came to us about a little over a year ago with a idea that we could come together and be more cost effective and more impactful as one organization versus 2 kind of replicating services within Southwest Washington. Through a long process, as you can imagine, of due diligence and work with our board and their board and our staff, we did come to an agreement and determined that we could take on that additional county and responsibility and still maintain the work that we do here in Clark County. And so as of January 1st, we officially took over the property and all the assets and the responsibility of operating the shelter there. And so they're inherited the responsibility for those animal sheltering contracts and are now working with them. So in essence, we are now one organization, Humane Society for Southwest Washington. We have a Vancouver campus. We have a Longview campus. We have our retail thrift store, which you can see on your impact report a little bit about that part of the operation. And then we have a new community clinic coming coming online that I'll talk about a little bit later on. But essentially it is, one operation with one set of leadership. I'm the president over the whole thing. Megan does all of the contract work now for multiple counties. And so we were able to bring, I think, a lot of expertise. We're a 127-year-old organization with a great track record, animal welfare expertise that I think was sometimes challenging to find that expertise and professional staff up in Longview. And we're now able to bring that knowledge, best practices, our standards of care to that facility, to that shelter, and to the contract arrangements up there.
The services that HSSW provides under these agreements are animal intake and sheltering for all of the stray animals in the community, protective custody and forensic support for neglect and abuse cases, medical care, vaccination and spay-neuter, animal husbandry, behavior support and enrichment, pathway planning for all of the animals, TNR, SNR, which is feral cat spay and neuter, and then also return to field, and DOA and wildlife. And I wanted to go over a little bit of how we work with animal control, or in this case, code enforcement. So we're essentially an extension of that work that animal control or code enforcement does out in your community. So when an officer or your code enforcement officer responds to stray, neglected, or dangerous animals, they essentially assess what the best path forward is for that animal. And when they determine that an animal should be impounded, then that's where our work begins. We try to provide really seamless support for animal control and for code enforcement. A lot of what we do is working with them to try to evaluate the best pathway planning for the animal, and also trying to assess if the animal should even come into the shelter. So we're not just here sitting in a reactive posture wanting to take in every animal. We really try to work with the officers and work with animal control to assess if the animal should even come into the shelter. If it's a stray, that's pretty straightforward. But for a lot of these cases, which I have a case up here from Battleground back from 2021, we work with them to try to assess that and make the best situation possible for the animals and for the people. Sometimes it's just that they need some additional support, some additional resources. In this case, in Battleground, it was not that. They had over 50 animals in this one home. They all looked like this, just very small, tiny dogs. They had a lot of cats that was in a trailer in a residence right behind them. They were all on the same property. And so we connected Brent Gullickson, the code enforcement officer for Battleground. We connected him with animal control to provide the additional support and resources. We sent a staff member out, and they essentially triaged the situation. We're communicating back to our vet team to let them know what kind of situation was going to be incoming. And we took all of them in on the same day. So in this situation, it was really best to take all of the animals, take them, not stagger the intakes, take them all in at the same time. The one dog that's up here in the picture of the three, the one on the left, is at home with me now. Her name is Poppy. I got a call from our VP of Veterinary Services at the time, and she asked me if I would be interested in, as you can imagine, a lot of them were pregnant. Asked if I would be interested in fostering. And so I did. And, it's my first foster fail ever. So she stayed at home with me. 6 months ago.
So as Megan said, it's not always about just taking in the animal. We really look to find ways to deter intake, as kind of counterintuitive as that sounds. Our goal is not to increase or build a bigger shelter. It's really to have more animals stay in the home where by and large they're loved. This example, of course, is one where things probably got out of control for a probably well-intended person, and needed assistance, and those animals needed to come in, get medical care, get behavior support, find new homes that were more appropriate. So we do have those cases, but most of the time people love their animal. They want their animal. They have some kind of a barrier or something that is preventing them from keeping them. So sometimes we're looking for other programs or outcomes or services that we can provide that allow that person to keep their pet that they love. And that's really the ultimate goal. If we can do that and keep that animal out of the shelter, that is a win every day. And it's a win for you as, you know, a community and as, you know, a jurisdiction paying for these services. So just know that we are always looking for ways to keep the animals home and out of the shelter when it's appropriate. We also are really, you know, one-stop shop. So when people come to us, they can do a lot of things. If they need to find a lost and found pet, if they need help or resources, they need a little bit of food to get them through the month. And that allows them to keep that pet, not surrender that pet, or it end up being a stray. Those are the kinds of programs and things. And we'll cover a little bit more about that, that we do to support the animals and help the people. We also really work to reduce the population through what Megan referenced before, our SNR, TNR services. Those are primarily focused on cats and getting community cats or feral cats spay-neutered and returned to the field. They're probably never going to be domesticated and they're not going to be adopted, but we want to stop the population growth. So we'll do some of that work for you as well. We do a lot of donor funded work. So I know we're jumping around just a little bit. There's the work that we provide for the service contract that we have for sheltering, but then there's a whole body of work that we do as a humane society, as a nonprofit, to really help the animals and the people in our community. And this is what I call the upstream work. So this is the work where we're trying to deter and keep animals in their home. We're supporting our child program. We just launched a new mobile vet clinic. I think you guys got to see it the day you were there. It's a 30-foot RV that is a surgical unit that we can do spay neuter for cats and small dogs. We can do wellness. We can do some minor kind of medical things on, and we now have that out in the community, including here at the library once a month, where we're providing low cost spay neuter for cats primarily. And then you can add on some wellness packages and things like that when you are using our services. So those services are only focused on low income HUD qualifying families in our community. So we have our mobile clinic. We're building a community clinic in Hazeldale soon, and I'll show you a picture and talk about that in a second. But these are the additive things that we are doing outside of the contract to really help and support you. And we believe that if we can have this private-public partnership and do this kind of work funded by our donors and by grants and things like this to get upstream and, like Megan said, not sit in this reactive posture and just keep taking animals in kind of an old, a dated kind of pound model, we really can benefit all of our communities by having healthier places for pets and people, having the resources for those that are great pet owners that just need a little bit of help and support. And we can do right by the animals who need us the most. So that's really, when we say supporting animals and helping people, that's what we're talking about. We also have a person on our team that runs what we call community solutions. So a lot of these programs and this community outreach and effort, and we are also intentionally working with the human service organizations. And you know, you might say, why would you do that? Well, 28 years of my career is on the human service side. And so I know that a lot of the things that kind of plague us when it comes to the animals are the same things that are affecting people as well, who are having some challenges. Social determinants of health and some of those same issues apply when we're talking about strays and intakes and things like that. So when we can work with these human service organizations and identify the needs of the people they're serving when it comes to their pets, we can be more upstream and really help and support them. So we're doing a lot of innovative and creative things, working with organizations that serve the unhoused. And many of the people that are unhoused have pets and love their pets and are actually really great pet owners, counter to what some people might think or say, but they need a little bit of help or support. Or sometimes we are that bridge to getting them off the street because they won't leave their animal. So if we can work with a human service organization and teach and help them on ways to safely take an animal and the person into, you know, an apartment or into a shelter and get them off of the street, that might be the thing that helps them make that decision. We're also working with senior organizations and a whole host of different human service organizations where they have pets that are loved that just need a little bit of help and support and service. And I like to think about it this way. We're all in this together. Our expertise and our specialty is animals and animal welfare. But when we see humans that are attached, and there are humans attached to all these animals, by no means am I saying we're going to solve all the human problems, but I think we're a part of the solution. And I think we are just a slice of the pie, so that when we see a person who has a need for an animal and we build trust and we see they have a human need, we can be a connector. And so our team is working really intentionally to know what resources, agencies, government support is out there and connect those dots for them. And so they may not have wanted a service before. They may not have trusted that. But if we're recommending and they have some kind of trust and faith in us because we've helped their animal, then maybe we're doing a small part to help advance and do some good things for the humans in our community. So that's when we just like to share that all of this work we think works really well with the contract, because at the end of the day, we want to help you mitigate costs and those things as well. And so it's not just about bringing more animals in and having bigger and bigger sheltering contracts and serving more animals. It's really about the end of the day, we should be reducing the number of animals that we're serving and finding creative solutions and ways to help the people and the animals ahead of when they actually have a need. So hope that explains a little bit more about the partnerships and the community strategy kind of work that we are doing alongside these contracts. And again, just for clarity, this is not funded by your contract. This is the work that we go out and seek private funding through donors and through grants to complement and support our communities that we serve.
Are you open to fielding questions, or do you want to wait till then?
Either way.
I just have a quick question on that topic. As far as partnering with some of the human services organizations, do you have like a brief list or some of the partnerships that you have done in the past?
Yeah, I can talk about, I mean, off the top of my head, I can talk about some of them that we're actively involved with all of the time. And sometimes it's training and education. Sometimes an animal needs to be spayed or neutered to actually be accepted into a program or get housing. It could be a variety of things that we help with. Share, Living Hope Church, the Safe Stay Communities. We are consulting with a potential bridge shelter that the city and the county are looking to build. We're consulting on the animal piece. How do you safely bring animals into that environment? Because we know how to do that. So that's an example. We're working with Lincoln Place and some of the different shelters. So it's a whole range and variety of organizations. Clark College is another. Now this is a little different than the animal piece, but Clark College, we're working with them on a program with Retails, our thrift store, to provide clothing for students who can't afford interview clothing. So we're doing a lot of innovative things depending on the part of our organization that makes sense. So we really put a lot of tentacles. So right now, I can't list them all off the top of my head, but those are some of the big ones you'd recognize. But we have over 30 organizations that are human service, not animal related, that we're working with and providing either consultation or support or sometimes medical assistance. We take the unit out. If they maybe have a lot of seniors who can't afford some wellness care, we'll go do a vaccine clinic, just a whole range of things depending on the need.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you as well. On this 136 animals from the city of Battleground, were these just like strays, or were these also surrenders?
No, they're not. All of these are our contracted intake. So we're contracted to take in your strays, dangerous dogs, bite quarantines, abuse cases, or neglect cases. So these only represent the animals that came in under the contract. So we took in other animals besides that are not billed to the city, because that's not part of our contract and the municipal service that you provide. But that we did that on our own, and that was all donor funded.
Okay, so somebody is paying for that. When somebody surrenders an animal, somebody has to pay.
We're
Okay.
paying, our donors are paying for it.
Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna ask, because you mentioned the seniors, have you guys got a chance to speak in front of the Battleground senior group? Okay.
I know them from my old days at Meals on Wheels people, but yeah, we'd love to talk to them.
So these are your 2024 statistics and cost of care breakdown. So this just shows a quick breakdown of the different buckets of the types of intakes that we took in terms of the species. I also have listed here what our cost of care is for 2024. This is an unaudited number, just to let you know. We do have our financials audited every year. It has not been done yet for 2024. And it also shows the breakdown based on the live intakes that we took in. So it does not include DOA and wildlife, but the live intakes with the cost of care and what it cost for us to carry the contract and provide these services. It shows here the reimbursement, the contracted reimbursement that we received for the flat fee for Battleground, and then the average cost to Battleground for this as well. So just to give you an understanding of how what our contract was based on. So it was based on a flat fee of 68,460 with an anticipated volume of animals that we thought would come in based on an average of the past 3 years. And we based that number on to get to the bigger number, we based it on the volume times the subsidized price per animal, which was $425, is what we anticipated. Our goal is obviously not to ask our donors to subsidize this municipal service, but we know it's going to take some time. So we approach this on a 3-year contract, and in 2026, our cost to the city is going to be $672. So as you can see with our cost last year of $733, we've already outgrown the contract a bit. But like I said, we know that this is just going to take time. And so our donors last year subsidized $230 for the city. We estimated that the total would be 165 animals total, and we took in 143 animals total. So it was a little under what we anticipated. There's some, which is why from the 425 that we expected, it went to 503. But again, it was still a subsidized number. And we know by doing that there's risk on both sides. We could take in far over what is expected or anticipated. And we know that we, take on the cost of that. And then, sometimes it's a little bit under as well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for this great information and for all the work you do across the community. We all love our pets. So I really appreciate that. The question I have is your operating costs for like your buildings, the vehicles, et cetera, ongoing operations and maintenance, all that. Is that built into the average cost per animal?
Great question. So on the next page, or the next slide, I talk about our breakdown of cost of care.
Thank you.
So these are the 4 big buckets. So labor and benefits, that is specific to animal care. So this does not include our fundraising, our community work. These are all the benefits and the labor that is directly tied to the people taking care of animals. Program operating, which includes volunteer, because obviously we have to have volunteers to care for the animals as well, our foster coordinator, things like that. Facility, utility, and fleet specific to animal care, and technology and office supplies, again, specific to animal care. So this just provides kind of a high level breakdown of that and what is included. The total the total here reflects the expenses associated just with the housing, feeding, medical treatment, staffing, and overall shelter operations that are specific to the direct care of the animals. To determine how we got to this average cost of $733, we take the total number here and divide it by our total number of live intakes for last year. Do you have any questions about that?
Move on and kind of wrap up our presentation. Are there any other questions about the cost of care or some of the elements of the shelter? Okay.
Sure.
great.
My only question is,
Yeah.
are there any models or, I know every city has a different contract. Is there any city that's doing something different that's more economically feasible, that's better for the city that we're not doing? Or do you have any suggestions for our contract to make it more beneficial?
You wanna take that or-
I mean, not that I can think of. All of the contracts are based on, all of the contracts for Clark County are based on this type of model. The cost per cost of care times expected volume. In terms of anything that you guys could do to make it more cost effective, there are things that we're already doing. So something newer to Battleground is that we are not taking in or trying to divert as many as possible healthy stray cats. So then that's going to decrease the volume of animals. So we have a whole education campaign, and we've really worked with our staff to divert all of those intakes, as many as they can successfully. The alternative to that is that they can bring the animal to us, but we're going to alter it, and then we're going to turn around and put it back in the community. That's something that we can do because they have a resource there. And what ends up happening is that there's a vacuum effect when those animals are taken out, and then more cats just come in that are unaltered. So by altering them and placing them back, they're taking up that resource, preventing other unaltered animals from coming in. And it really helps to stabilize that population. So that is one thing that we're doing, and it's somewhat new to Battleground. We started piloting this with City of Vancouver and unincorporated Clark County back in 2021, fall of 2021, and it's been pretty successful. So, you know, if there's anything else though that comes up that is a trend or that we find successful in other communities, or we want to pilot with Battleground, then I'd be happy to bring that to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add that, you know, different communities have slightly different models where they may not have the public-private, they may stand up their own shelter, municipal shelter. You know, there are examples of that in the state of Washington. If we go right over the river into Oregon, Multnomah County, Clackamas County, Washington County, all have municipal shelters. I think what you find there is that their average cost of care is at minimum double what ours is. And so when you partner with us as a nonprofit, we're able to have cost savings that you may not be able to as a government agency. And we also can really lean on volunteers, which is great for the community. It gives people an outlet. We have a lot of seniors that volunteer. But it also allows us to keep those labor costs, as much as they're the highest line on that sheet, they would be even higher. So last year we had over 1,000 active volunteers that represent on a federal calculation of an hourly wage for a volunteer if we paid them over $4 million worth of free labor. So, you know, we're able to kind of defer and keep some costs low by accessing those volunteer programs. And so, you know, sure, are there things that we could look at? Absolutely. We can brainstorm things. We're always looking nationally at what's going on and throughout the state. I will also kind of toot Megan's horn a little bit. Megan is really, I think the work that we have done here in Clark County and the work that she's done with the contracts is getting some national recognition. So she's actually, excuse me. I'm gonna let you tell it. I am not sick. I just have a dry throat. Megan is speaking on some national panels about how to kind of forge these local partnerships the way we have done here and with the other jurisdictions throughout the county. So again, we are open to creative ideas, but I think, you know, we should be really proud of the partnership that we've created here between the Humane Society, your community, and the other communities here. And I think we're running a pretty efficient operation. I mean, costs are affecting you just the way, are affecting us just the way they affect you and other businesses. The minimum wage costs, utility costs. We're enduring all of those things, but I think we're trying to do as much as we can with this little cost.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I would add is that this is a really cost-effective model. This is why other communities, cities, and counties are moving towards this model if they're not there already, because they've found that by standing up their own shelter and by operating this on their own, that it's a lot more expensive to do it that way, to maintain a building, to pay government wages. And, you know, we just are able as a nonprofit to do things in a more cost-effective way. So we're always looking at ways to keep our costs down, and that's something that's really important to us. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, clearly I'm talking too much. I apologize. So I think what I'd like to just close with is kind of dovetailing on some of the stuff we talked about before in terms of the community work. We've provided you a list of some of the programs that we're actively providing for your community. Again, at our cost, donor supported, not part of the contract, but work that we think is really vital to the health of animals and people and having this great partnership work. So we talked about the mobile vet clinic. If you haven't seen it, it is beautiful. And it's at the library every 4 weeks for 4 days. And you can see those dates and people can sign up for appointments on our website. So that is something that you can promote and talk about. And that is low cost spay neuter for cats. Behavior and training, we do have a professional dog trainer on our team who provides low cost classes to the community. Right now, we're doing that, some through the shelter, some through a partnership with Will Haven, which is a veterinary clinic in kind of East Vancouver, where we're partnering on some space until our new space is built. And that's really great. We do a lot of other education programs and things like that and have a lot of resources on our website. So I would encourage you to direct any of your constituents who have just questions about how to manage an animal in a home or other information. We have a wealth of information and resources free and available on our website. The low-cost wellness clinics, these are in addition to the mobile clinic going to 4 to 5 different locations throughout the community. We also kind of do these MASH style stand-up clinics where we'll go work at Share and partner with them at one of their facilities, or we'll work with Living Hope Church at one of their big support fairs for the unhoused. And so we'll go out at a variety of places and do kind of wellness and vaccine clinics free of charge most of the time. And some of that work is donor funded as well. We have our child program. That's our free food pantry for pets. And so that's available, no questions asked, no requirements at the shelter, also at retails at our thrift store. So people that find that more convenient, that's over on 4th Plain in Vancouver, can walk into retails. If that is something that you need and think you need more in your community, we can also look at that. We also work with Clark County Food Bank. They help us distribute food through their 30 food pantries. So more than likely that is helping folks up here with one of their outlets. And that's been a great partnership. We also have a program called Safe Haven. That is temporary boarding for someone who has a short-term need. It might be a medical need. It might be going into rehab. Maybe they don't have family or somebody to take care of an animal during a short hospital stay, something like that. We will, as we have capacity and ability, we will take those animals in and temporarily board them for free in the shelter or put them into one of our designated foster homes. And that's typically like a 2-week. If there's a real extreme situation, we'll try to partner with them and maybe find a foster volunteer who will take them into their home. We have our help fund that is actually shifting into our new community clinic and through the mobile clinic where we will be providing that subsidized care. It's been a fund that in the past, until we got these new things built, we would provide small micro grants to people in the community who needed some support for their animal and couldn't afford the veterinary care. And then the spay and save, which we've talked a lot about. So what else is coming? What I'm most excited about, and I think the picture that you can see on your sheet here is we broke ground about 3 weeks ago on our community veterinary clinic. This will be a low-cost subsidized high-quality care veterinary clinic, very similar to what you might go to with one of your pets, but it will be for income-qualified families in our community only. The law only allows us to provide medical care for income-qualified families in the state of Washington. So this is not a clinic open for everyone, but it is those that we think are most in need and need these services and probably aren't accessing services at all or very limited as it is. So this will be a full clinic where we'll start out for the first 6 months focused on spay neuter for dogs and cats, wellness, vaccines. Phase 2, after we kind of get things running, we'll be moving into dentals, specialty surgeries, and some urgent care. So over time, it will become a full operational clinic, but this will be low cost and subsidized care. So we are doing a lot of fundraising to make sure that we can provide these excellent services. We still have to pay veterinarians the wage that they deserve. But we want to do this in a highly effective and cost effective way. And so that donor support will be critical. We are really excited about it. It's 5,400 square feet. We're leasing space in Hazeldale, right on Highway 99. We chose that location because we felt that was a good spot that gave access to all of the jurisdictions, even including Cowlitz. It's not right there, but it's 20, 30 minutes and gives them a little bit more accessibility. But obviously that will also provide some support to you all as well here in Battleground. So that will open by September, should be built out by August. And we are excited to have a grand opening and we will invite you to that. This has been a dream of ours for a long, long time, and COVID and some other things kind of held us back, but we are very, very excited that we are just so close to the finish line. And we know in the time we've been dreaming and building the plan for this, that the need just continues to increase. So low cost community clinic. We're going to continue subsidized spay neuter. We believe that is an important part of our work and what we do to control the population, and then provide this subsidized wellness for those that want to be pet owners or the family of 4 who just can't quite afford that medical care, but they want the joy of having that dog or cat for their kids and in their home. We want to be able to provide that support for them. You can take a look on our website when you go to look at our medical services and our mobile vet clinic. There is a chart right on there for who qualifies and what the different levels are based on individual or, family income levels. So follows the county standards for low income, and it's pretty clear, who qualifies. And we think that there'll be probably more need and demand that we can manage. And maybe there's a future clinic up here in Battleground one day. We'll see. So a lot going on. Again, we're really proud and honored that you've chosen us and worked with us on the sheltering contract, but equally proud and equally want you to know that the work we're doing alongside you to really help manage this as our community grows, as Southwest Washington continues to expand and grow, and we have more and more people moving here for a lot of great reasons. We know that means more animals. The national average is that 70% of households have at least one domestic pet. So we know that that means as people move here, there's more animals. And so we want to be on top of this. We want to be proactive, and we want to be working with you to manage the animal population, to manage the resources for animals. And we know at the end of the day that there is an inherent cost to this. And so we want to work together to make sure we're addressing it and managing it as best we can. So thank you.
Another question. It's okay. First of all, thank you for coming here. Your continued relationship with the city is very valued, and thanks for allowing us to have tours. I know I went on a tour last year. I was amazed by how the clinic was ran. Beautiful, beautiful clinic. I had a couple questions. As you guys brought on Cowlitz County and you acquired the Longview campus, which I've been there personally a long time ago, I'm sure you guys had quite a lot of work to do to get it up to your standards. Nothing against who was running it before, but again, comparing your facility to the facility that I had seen previously before you guys took it over. Did you guys also take over the animal control section? I know animal control was operating out of there as well.
Yeah, so animal control was part of the contract for many years for Humane Society for Cowlitz County and all of the jurisdictions that they served. However, in 2023, they decided that they were going to eliminate that part. This was obviously prior to us coming on board. They decided that they were going to eliminate that part of the partnership. So sometime in late summer, early fall, they let all of the jurisdictions know that they would no longer, starting in 2024, be providing the animal control support. And so that ended, and each jurisdiction was then charged with essentially standing up their own programs for animal control. So when they eliminated that, they obviously had animal control officers that were there and employed by Humane Society of Cowlitz County. And then a couple of those were then hired by City of Longview, Cowlitz County. I know Kelso has a part-time, it's similar to Battleground, actually. They have a half code enforcement, half animal control officer. So with that, those were not part of the contracts whenever we came on board. It's something that we would be, open to discussing both in Cowlitz County and in Clark County potentially as well. So,
Thank you for that. And just doing some rough math here, about 71% of your revenue goes towards your labor and benefits, which I can imagine veterinary costs are not cheap, and the benefits that go along with it. But I cannot help but notice that you have over $4 million in volunteers, the time volunteers put in. And so, as I am very grateful for volunteers and the people that have a heart behind serving, I'm sure you are as well. What do you guys do as far as continuing to draw volunteer base to the shelter and the clinics, or is it kind of been something you don't have to work at?
I would say it's not something we worry a lot about. There's a lot of interest in volunteering with us. We're an animal friendly community and a lot of great animal people here. We do some promotion, but quite honestly, I think we are getting on average 20 to 30 applications a week for people who want to volunteer with us. We have a very robust application process. And then, as you can imagine, any volunteer that is going to work with an animal, and these are all kind of enhancements to what the professional staff are doing in terms of covering the basics. These are the additional enrichment and supporting the staff and greeters. There's walking dogs. There's a whole variety of things they do, but anyone that's going to work with an animal has to go through extensive training. So we have a requirement of at least 6 months of service with us. If we're going to invest in that training, we need that return. But I think we have a good reputation. I think it's a pretty desirable place to be. And I think we've built a really nice community for people that want that. Not all of our volunteers are seniors, but many are at the end of their career or heading into retirement and in retirement. And so I think for many of them, it's a newfound community. And so we serve kind of that role as well for those that love animals. There are other things people can, if you're not into working with the animals, you can come in and be a greeter and work in our adoption center, or you can help with a special event fundraiser, or you could do data entry in our office. So there's a whole variety of ways that they get involved. But and we will be building up that program up in Cowlitz County as well.
Yeah, I know up there they ran pretty heavily on their volunteers, but I don't know if they went quite through the rung that you guys put them through. And I think that's admirable, that the animal care is equal to human care in a lot of ways, that people care that much. Last question, as a nonprofit, do you guys have the ability to do internships for veterinary professionals? We do. And we do have some internships and externships in our clinic. So a variety, both vet techs and veterinarians that can do rotations through. I believe that we have a new relationship with one of the universities. I think Western is doing a new program with us where they rotate through. So that does help. And we want to kind of see the interest for future sheltering veterinarians, because being a veterinarian in a shelter is a very different type of medicine. And so we like to kind of show off what that field could look like for a future veterinarian. So yeah, so we do. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for coming. It's really nice to have you come and give a report. It helps keep us cohesive and know that what we're doing up here is making a difference. So thank you very much for coming and doing that. I just have one quick question. What's your capacity, and do you ever get to that limit where you start to get nervous about capacity?
Yes. We can handle between 90 to 100 dogs, depending, if we have a litter of puppies, we can take a few more because they can be housed in the same kennel if they're small puppies. Kittens, 100 and, this number, about 120. Cats, again, if you have a litter of kittens, they can go together in one kennel. So it's a little bit fluid, but that gives you some rough numbers. And then we have a robust foster program, especially on the kitten side. We are going into what's called kitten season. The kittens are all born in the warmer months. So as the weather starts to improve, here come the kittens. And so we work with over 100 kind of active trained fosters who will take those kittens into their home until they're ready to safely come back into the shelter to be altered and go up for adoption. It's not great to have them in a shelter when they're young and their immune system is underdeveloped. So we do that as well to manage the capacity. So there are times of the year on the cat side, we're well above 120 in our overall care. They just may not all be in the building because they're in the foster program and then kind of rotate through as they hit that 8 weeks. They'll come in for surgery, go up for adoption, and then they get adopted pretty quickly. The kittens do. So that is kind of the physical in Vancouver. And then we are constantly watching it. We have a report that we send out at the close of every day that shows exactly how many animals we have, where they are, how many in each, front facing, back holds, protective holds, where we have room and capacity. Our goal is always to be no more than 80% so that we always have room to provide the service to you when you have a need, strays or a case that might come in. But the world is not perfect and that doesn't always happen. And so there are times where we might be a little bit higher, but we manage it very carefully. We have a team called Population Management that is watching our whole population, our capacity, and working very closely with our animal care teams to create pathways for those animals for adoption, or in some cases, an animal may not be a good adoption candidate. So we have a lot of rescue partners. We might reach out to another shelter in the region who is lower in capacity, and we may send a few over to them to help manage that. So we do a whole host of things, but we're never going to be sitting here just kind of holding it like 140% capacity. We're going to take a lot of strategic moves to manage that. Never will it be euthanasia as one of the outcomes for space. We will never do that.
I'd just like to add a little bit more about pathway planning. So that's part of our expertise and something that we are always working on. Pathway planning is essentially planning out the path for the animal from the beginning of the stay to the very end of the stay and making sure that you're doing that as quickly and efficiently as possible. You don't want animals to linger in the shelter. You want to be working on a plan for them. So whether that is transferring them out, fostering them out, altering them and moving them straight up into adoptions. If they need a little bit of work or TLC from the clinic, making sure that we're getting them on the clinic's radars as soon as they come in, that we're moving them into a pod that we call our blue pod, which for those of you who came to do the tour, you're familiar with what that is. So our blue pod is not a front-facing area where our dogs are, but those are the dogs that we're working with. And we have specialized volunteers who are really well trained. Our staff are trained. Our professional dog trainer is working with them, or at least working on developing a plan for them. So through a variety of different things, we're always working on what the pathway is for that animal so that we're getting them from the intake to the outcome as quickly as possible so that we're managing our capacity.
And I think you could see from the report, I think it's at 12.8 days is our average length of stay for all animals. So we're working pretty quickly to make sure they're not staying in the shelter very long.
Any other questions down there?
Going through. So if you don't have anything, again, appreciate what you guys are doing for the community. Also love the approach that you decided you saw the need, you got ahead of it. And the different communities that you're reaching out to that could really help everybody as a community, making your jobs a lot easier. Also the one thing I appreciate, what you guys are bringing forward now is you broke down the costs. It was a great question. asked, how does this get broken down so our constituents can hear that as well? Because then you're like, whoa, that could be a lot of money. You see the number of cats or animals taken in was less than the previous year. But however, you're like, yeah, but we're expanding and it's growing in other ways. And so everybody's going to be seeing the cost rise for this. So it's not just us, it's everybody. And I think we're feeling that everywhere. So, and it's great organization, what you guys are doing, and I appreciate it. Thank you for coming out here and presenting to us today. One last real quick question is, do you guys go out to any career fairs? Like, for the kids in high schools, do you guys have a representative that goes out there?
We don't proactively, if we are invited to speak or we have the time and capacity for a career fair or speak at a high school, we are more than happy to do that. So if you think there's a need or an opportunity, we're open to that. I think one of the things that we want to do is we want to inspire future animal welfare, folks, and that it is a great career. I spent almost 30 years on the human service side and have now been 4.5 years in animal welfare, and I'm able to kind of blend those. But I think as an industry, we can do a better job of kind of promoting this as a really nice career path for folks, even who love animals, but maybe have great people skills and communication skills and marketing skills and finance skills. There are a lot of great pathways.
No questions. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to make sure that everybody has received our 2024 impact report as well. So we just started this last year. So in 2024, we passed out an intake report for 2023. So this is the one for 2024. It looks a little bit different than last year's, but it includes roughly the same information. It includes everything that we talked about today. With the exception of just the story. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the case that we took in this past year with the gentleman was just charged and arrested. The animals came into us. There were 9 dogs that were in the garage, and 4 of them came into us. The other 5 were already deceased. And so those 4 dogs, 2 of them are pictured here, have already been adopted. And so wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that. We also have our overall community impact on the back, including the number of animals that we took in for the entire community in the shelter, total adoptions. And I just wanted to, this is only our second year doing this. So if there's any information that you guys would like to see on here that's not included, then please let me know. I'm happy to work on that and include that for future years.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys coming in. Very informative. And as has been said, I think the exchange of information helps extremely well, or helps us from this side. I will add to the cost and the volunteer aspect. I know my daughter volunteered just so she could get the adoption fee waived, I think is why she volunteered. And I do know the cost from, I have a brother who's a vet and city manager, has a daughter who's going through vet school. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things he always said to me, it was harder to get into vet school than it was med school. There were more applicants than there were people in. And he's like, we have to learn more than one animal. So and I know there's a vet shortage. So I know costs are hard, and I appreciated the information that the Portland costs are so much higher with a different model. So that was very helpful to me. So thank you and appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you all. We appreciate it.
All right. And that
Thanks.
closes our work session. Thank you all. All right. Welcome to the 7 o'clock showing of the Battleground City Council. It is March 17th, 2025. We'll call this meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Ms. Salili, roll, please.
Mayor McCoy,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bowman,
Here.
Councilmember Kuipers,
Here.
Councilmember Ferrer,
Present.
Councilmember DeRozier, Councilmember Davis,
Here.
Councilmember Overholser,
Here.
and the clerk is present. That concludes the roll.
Okay, that brings us to the agenda approval portion of the meeting. Now would be the time to amend the agenda. If not, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? I have a motion by Councilmember Ferrer, second by Councilmember Overholzer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you for that. Brings us to summary reports and presentations. These are report outs from counselors on committees they sit on behalf of council. And we'll start off with Councilmember Ferrer on ECHO.
Nothing much this evening. I've forwarded some emails to our city manager to take a look at and to send, have everybody on council take a look at it and see if these are any House bills or any language that we would support as a council. And so I would know which way we want to go moving forward on that committee.
Perfect, thank you. EMS 2, Councilmember Overholser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we met on Monday, March 10th. We are still in the process of deliberation for adding the 2 additional committee members. As far as from the small cities, we do have unanimous a yes on that from the Center, Ridgefield, and Woodland. They're all in favor. Steve Stewart from Ridgefield did have a few other questions, which I did bring to the board for deliberation, but we're just waiting on council, county council to get back to us on that. We did do a finance report. We're currently sitting at $375,433 in the fund balance currently. We are still in lieu of processing reimbursements for the fire districts, new tablets and some software for optimizing routing and things like that. So that's where we're at on a fund balance, and our next meeting will be April 14th. That's all I got.
I'll go the talks with the city of Vancouver.
Well, Chris might know more about that than I, as far as she's part of the work group. So they're meeting more often than we are. But as I know right now, we're still in conversations.
Dad?
The work group, I believe, meets again in a week. We're still mulling over whether we can piggyback onto their RFP because it has to be identical and there can't be any add-ons. And so we're trying to pursue that piece. And if it works for us to piggyback on, it's going to be up to City of Vancouver to allow us to share resources, as AMR has indicated we would be able to do that. So I don't think a decision has been made yet, and we're still talking with the City of Vancouver and trying to get them to come along on that one. Still unknown.
All right. I have a couple committees to report out on. The RTC meeting actually was attended by Ridgefield alternate. I wasn't able to make that. However, looking at the agenda and the notes, it was mostly typical, just their some of their title projects and their annual reports and getting ready for grant awards. So nothing too big to report out on that regardless. I'll jump ahead to the CDBG board report. That is the Fed program that we sometimes get money for sidewalks and parks. The money for what normally goes to cities sidewalks and parks. A lot of it went to the Bertha House. So it took up a large chunk. So our sidewalks and parks did not get funded this go around. There's also some discussion on how much money actually will be coming back down. And so the board may need to meet again, depending on what is cut at the federal level. So the funds right now are unsure what's coming through. With the continuing resolution having passed, I believe it may be okay, but I am not an expert in that realm. So probably more to report out on that. However, one thing of note, the WIC building on Main Street, which is county owned, the old bank, did get $200,000 from CDBG for, and as you know, that building's not in great repair. So roof, siding, a whole lot of things. They asked for 400. I did reach out to Sue Marshall, the chair of the county council, just to let her know, hey, this might be a good thing to maybe ask your state reps. Maybe they can help. Maybe there's some other partnerships. And one thing I'd like to propose to the council, there's also maybe some partnerships from us on that parking lot because they don't use that parking lot and it's pretty centrally located for downtown. So just a thought to put in your cap for a way to partnership with the county. I know we'd all like that building to look a little nicer. So just a lot of questions right now, not a lot of answers on that project, but they will go ahead with the 200,000 and do as much as they can and hope to get more. And then finally, CTRAN. Oh, I also had another one too. I got DCWA as well. Discovery Clean Water Alliance, I sat in for Deputy Mayor Bowman. They will be reaching out to new counselors for tours. So I think Jeannie's the only one that hasn't taken a tour. You get your junior, senior, or junior sewer badge. So it's pretty impressive. Everybody tries to steal it from me at home. There's a graph, and this is probably not going to come across, but I'll share it with you and then we can put it in the record. But this graph right here, and there's one other graph that I wanted to show. Oh, here it is. So look at this orange line. That's their capacity. And then you look at the trend line. And that's a real important one because as you add capacity, if you add capacity before you have use, your costs go way up because you don't have any users. If you add capacity too late, then you have a moratorium on building. So they've done a really good job of matching capacity to what's coming in, especially considering that region serves 25% of the population in Clark County, but 50% of the growth. So you can see how that group has been pretty stretched. All right, so then that brings us to CTRAN. A couple of things to report out on that. They did bring forward the current proposal to add to Battleground in September, pending board approval, and there will be some open houses on that, one of which is here. I don't have the date and time on that off the top of my head. Current, yes. It's a 7-day-a-week program, 5:30 to 7 p.m. weekday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekends. It's on demand and you can schedule 48 hours ahead. They use Ford Transit vans. They can handle 2 bikes. You can pay on board. You can use the app. It does have an ADA and a lift. The median wait time is about 20 minutes and the average ride is about 30 minutes. 85% are booked via the app. Additionally, Route 7 is adding 1 weekday and 3 weekend additional because it is one of the routes that's surpassed pre-COVID levels. Those will all be September. So these are all proposed service additions that will go in the budget and then get voted on in September. Yep. It's Mike.
Not bad then. I just wanted to add for the current or the bus that youth 18 and under are free.
And to your point, the current is heavily used by our youth population. The comment was Camas current is heavily used by the youth down there.
What about seniors? Or do they use the? Okay, okay. You said 18 and younger. I want to make seniors were taken care of. Free.
Yep. So September 14th is the proposed implementation date for that. Okay, any questions or any other reports outs on committees?
Do you have any other news from the C-Tran?
We tabled the vote for the language change till next meeting. So that will be the April meeting. And that brings us to presentations. Looks like we have a new employee to introduce. And looks like our esteemed municipal court judge, Mr. Wheeler's here. So please, sir.
Good evening, members of the council. Mr. Mayor, thank you for having us here. It is my pleasure this evening to be introducing the council to Kristen Kilborn, our community court coordinator. So I was last in front of you folks back in December talking about community court along with Ms. Carmy. It is wonderful to have a really big step accomplished now with Kristen on board. So I'm going to introduce her. She's going to have just a few very brief remarks and looking forward to meeting all of you. In regards to Kristen's experience, she most recently worked at CMAR as a behavioral health receptionist. She was involved in coordinating services for clients with mental health needs. During her college practicum, she had a term where she sat and learned about drug and family court programs. So both a kind of a boots on the ground experience, for lack of a better term, on a sort of a frontline position. And then very much a good working knowledge of community court from several examples that she was able to attend and participate or watch at least. Kristen is married. She has 2 dogs that keeps her very busy in her spare time. She has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a second one in cybercrime investigation and enforcement. So very clearly, when we start our Battleground CSI, she'll be one of the first people we come and get involved in that. Her hobbies and special skills: she enjoys traveling, paddleboarding, hiking, and hanging out with her family. So Kristen has just a couple of remarks.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'm excited to see where community court is able to go and my ability to partake in that.
Thank you. Welcome to the family.
We turn right here, look up there, and say hello to Councilmember Bowman, who's joining us on Zoom.
You can ask Liz for a copy. All right. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the good work you guys will do. I have no doubt you will do it. Okay, that brings us to the citizens communication portion of the meeting. Just FYI, I did get one blank one, so if I don't call your name, please raise your hand and we'll try to get to you, because there was nothing on the sheet. So I want to make sure everybody gets their chance. So we'll now open the meeting for citizens communication. Individuals are limited to 3 minutes to provide comments. Total time for comments shall not exceed 30 minutes. It's an opportunity for members of the public in a limited public forum, not an opportunity for extended comments or dialogue. Please refrain from derogatory remarks, personal attacks, campaign speeches, and applause. City Council does desire to allow public comment. City business must proceed in an orderly, timely manner. Please direct your comments to the mayor. Council may not be able to respond to individual comments. We may refer you to a staff member for assistance. City manager has business cards at the podium. Feel free to take one. And if you have handouts, please give them to the clerk, who is standing right there to my left, right at the podium. Thank you for your understanding and participating in the council meeting this evening. Is there anybody on Zoom that we want to start with?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then we'll go to the in-person. First up, we have Wayne Gersich. I don't know if they can see, do they have their timer up there? We have it on our screen. Okay.
My name is Wayne Gersich, and I'm here today to talk about water fluoridation. And as I promised you, I am giving the mayor this book, Fluoride District of Mr. Bryson. I hope after he reads it and passes on to all of you, and you can get it audible, he should give everybody a book report about the cover-up of what our government did. How many of you know they had fluoride in the atom bomb when they blew up Hiroshima? How do they know that fluoride was one of the most toxic things used in everything? And all of these corporations, DuPont, you name it, the Teflon pans, all of these things have fluoride in it. It's poison. And they've all declared these things poison, but they paid good lawyers to cover it up. In the back of the book, they talk about Paul Connett going to Washington and testifying. And he's the one from Fluoride Action Network. His son was the lawyer in the fluoride lawsuits in California and San Francisco last year. Fluoridation should have been stopped, but it was Rachel Levin that stopped the findings, and they had to go to court. And it wasn't until September where they opened it up and told everybody that fluoride's poison. So Kennedy, I think you're all waiting for Kennedy, because if you really had a moral compass, you would stop it now.
Please no shouting.
Because there
Please
was
no
another
shouting.
thing too, is the fact that that lawsuit, last year, there was a law passed that the mayor, what it said is that the people can either keep the fluoride in the water or get rid of it. You guys claim you did some study for 3 months before you gave your workshop. But the odd thing is, where did it say that the mayor and the city councils could keep this poison in the water? Because apparently when it first was voted on was in the 60s, and the people voted on it. They voted to drink poison because they were lied to. And I can show you that. There's a skull and crossbone right here on the back of, what does a skull and crossbone mean? Poison, right? So they're told that this air pollution from China is going to reduce cavities. Well, the odd thing is that law that went through last year that you can get rid of it, it didn't say that you had the right to vote for all of us to medicate us with poison. And this is what's really strange, is that I'd like to see where in that law it says mayors and city councils could keep the fluoride in the water, that it should have been put up for a vote. Because if these people think you should vote to medicate your neighbor, they should have had the right to vote again, right? And you took that away from us. So in Vancouver, the city council, Bart, he told me the people had voted in the 60s to drink poison, and it's the people that would have to vote to get rid of it. But in Vancouver, the mayor and the city council last July ordered $843,000 worth of sodium fluoride. They didn't let the people vote. They didn't tell them they had the right to vote. Something's really wrong here. And what I'm putting on public record is I'm going to give this to you, and you really need to read it, because when you see the cover up of this, it is unconscionable. Fluoride is one of the worst contaminants, air pollution
Thank you. That's your
ever.
time. That's your time. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Dave Rowe.
I've got a handout. Could I distribute it?
Yeah, you can give it to the clerk. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'm Dave Rowe. I lived in Battleground since 2001. I worked in the Flex Building on Grace Avenue, constructing the Battleground Rose float from 2006 to 2014. I always wondered why the railroad tracks in our city have only been used for freight and don't have passenger trains on them. Those tracks go to Portland and many other cities in our area. I've handed you a map that shows where those railroad tracks exist. I understand light rail transit trains are planned to be built on the interstate bridge costing $2 billion. Battleground was asked to pay for light rail from Portland to Vancouver. I am glad the city of Battleground voted or is withholding not to pay for light rail that would only serve the city of Vancouver. The $2 billion investment would build a regional railroad system serving Clark County better than light rail. I believe it's time for passenger trains to use those railroad tracks along Grace Avenue for the citizens of Battleground and Clark County. I hope that Clark County doesn't evolve into Southern California, because they have a gridlock with their autos. But this system that we have here that's already in existence could avoid that auto gridlock. And this proposal that I'm presenting to you should be a bi-state authority between Washington and Oregon, but I'm approaching you because it has to start at the grassroots, and that's where we are. And so, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council. Pleasure to see you all. I've come this evening to give you a report on the cookie cutter housing that you're running. You're doing swimmingly. If you head over to Daybreak, the newest one, you would see what a Portland planner would just be ecstatic about. It's row upon row of duplexes, soulless, really, doesn't meet in with the neighborhood. It's kind of sad. If we head to Riverbend, which is north of here, they are following the code. They're not building their houses contiguously per the code. They're building them across the street. They have 4 plans and they build them across the street. So they are meeting the code. And then, of course, if you look at the child's play area, it too is sad. Then my favorite, over on Northeast Onsdorf, Beverly. Beverly was messed up by the city. They're building houses, the same plan, side by side by side. Same color, same everything, private road, no street lights. It's an East German planner's dream of what 1980s East Berlin should look like. And so you can stop this. You can order a moratorium and have the city steal someone else's plan from Blaine or from Camas or somewhere, put your name on it. Let's have 2025 housing instead of 1995 housing. I'm also here this evening to wonder what happened to the code department. It must have gotten closed because as I walk the city, there are yards full of wrecked cars, travel trailers, trash, and everything else. So I'm hoping at some point that you can reinstate the code department so that we don't have to live amongst that. And the third thing I'm here about this evening is what happened last meeting. $125,000, $130,000 given to the cops for the body cam bonus. That's hard-earned money from our citizens. We bought the body cams for their safety, for the people they come in contact with, their safety, and for the citizens' safety to keep us safe from lawyers. And so I'm a little disappointed that we had to buy their use. So that program now, I assume, is up to $500,000 and is only going up. And it is disturbing to me that you authorize that. You are our line of defense. And in this case, you failed us. $100 and some odd thousand coming out of the people. It's tough times. And you missed the boat on that. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Johnson, next up, Jessica Cole.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name's Jessica Cole and I'm a resident. I appreciate the council's efforts to protect the residents from unfair cost burdens, and I'm glad there's shared agreement that the bridge needs to be replaced. Where I differ on opinion from you is on light rail, and personally I support it as long as Battleground isn't paying the same share as communities with direct access. And I've spoken to some residents who also strongly support light rail. I was surprised to hear that the recent resolution was described as just a piece of paper with no real impact, yet it still required legal review at the city's expense. That raises a fair question about whether that was the best use of resources. I was also disappointed by the decision to revert to the full previous MLPA language before the C-Tran board vote. A small revision could have reflected Battleground's concerns while making sure to keep the project on track and managing costs. What matters most to me, you stole a little bit of my thunder, is improving public transit in our own community. If light rail is added, I was hoping it would free up some more buses for Battleground, expanding stops, coverage, frequency, and evening and weekend service. Transit options here are lagging behind Vancouver, and that impacts access to jobs, services, and daily essentials, and I've personally experienced this firsthand. I know that residents who rely on the bus to get to work or appointments in Vancouver because those services and jobs aren't available here. But current bus schedules don't support much evening or weekend travel. In some cases, buses nearly run 2 hours longer in Vancouver than they do in Battleground. And that's a real barrier since we're further out. Later services are essential to get people home. We need stronger, more reliable transit system in Battleground. While the current is a welcome step and the other new additions, it's just a start. So please consider these perspectives as you continue your work on regional transportation. I truly appreciate the time and thought you're putting into these conversations. Lastly, I'm looking forward to the staff presentation on dark sky and street light technologies. I'm a strong supporter of dark sky communities. Reducing light pollution helps protect wildlife, improve sleep, and supports energy conservation. And I'm excited to see how Battleground can adopt these practices. In a few more seconds, I just want to say from a month ago, when you all came to the consensus of supporting the option 1 for the speed limits, except for the 503 in Maine, you're waiting for a stay on that. Thank you so much for supporting that. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And that's all the people I have signed up. Is there anybody else? Okay. That concludes the citizens' comments portion of the meeting. We'll move on to consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda. Does any council member see a reason to remove one for further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda in its entirety as presented.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ferrer, second by Councilmember DeRochers. Any discussion? Hearing, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us to the aforementioned dark sky.
Good evening, council. Give me a second. I'll share my screen. All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to talk about dark skies and smart streetlight technology. So what I'll talk about is what it actually is, how our existing streetlights play into dark skies, what smart streetlights are, kind of what features they have, give you some final thoughts, and then I'll be happy to answer questions. So what are dark skies? Dark skies are a night sky that's free of excessive artificial light, allowing better visibility of the stars. A dark sky community is a town, city, or other legally organized area that actively works to preserve the night sky by implementing and enforcing strict outdoor lighting ordinances, educating residents about light pollution, and fostering widespread community support for dark skies. Smart light street light technology. What is it? So it's technology that allows the street light to interact with its surrounding. Some of the features of smart street lights are dimming or turning off when not in use. So they're essentially motion activated. It helps create those dark skies. Asset management. So essentially the street light tells you if it's working or not so that you can fix them, obviously, if they aren't. They have cameras. You can do sound detection. So in some communities, they use them to detect gunshots. They have traffic detection and counting. They do pollution monitoring, parking monitoring, energy metering, so they can actually tell you how much each streetlight is using for energy, and then emergency route guidance. So you can shut off certain lights to essentially show people how to get out of town in an emergency. Communities where like tsunamis is an issue, that's a good way to do it, light up the path that you're supposed to take. So for our existing streetlights, for our Cobra heads, example over here on Scotton, Those are already compliant as the light shines down on the street. To meet like the platinum standard of dark skies, you have to offer shields. Essentially, it's like if a nearby homeowner wants their area not polluted with light, you can put a house or a shield on it. It's called a house shield. Those are essentially $25 to $50 per shield. They are only necessary when requested. So going forward, we're essentially compliant. The only slight change would be offering that. We have put that on before, so it's not necessarily something we don't offer. To be honest, it doesn't come up frequently, but to, like I said, kind of get you the platinum standard for that light, that would be the one modification. For our Acorn, they're not compliant and there is no retrofit. You'd have to have a new fixture. Essentially, this one on the right is from Acuity Brands. The light's actually in the top of that unit, so it shines down. So essentially providing the same operation as a Cobra head light, but the look of the Acorn light that we have. Cost for that's about $1,350 per fixture. And then they offer the same type of shields, and that's about $84. So going forward, if you wanted to do this, we would just need a new spec requiring those. The light cost would actually be pretty similar to what we're putting in now, so there's not much of a cost change there. For existing lights, you would have to look for grants, or that would be my recommendation. And then we need buy-off from CPU. So our agreement with them for maintenance is essentially the Acorn style that is now. They don't want to carry a large inventory of lights that is not kind of standardized throughout the region. So my best guess would be is that they would maintain them for us, but it's something that we would need to supply. It's no different than the Black Cobra head that we have now. They don't actually supply that for us. We have a stock down at Ops, and when one goes down, we just provide it to them and they install it for us. For smart street lights for the Cobra head, the big key with the lights is having a 7-pin connector. Cobra heads already come with this. So to install the smart feature, it would essentially be $100 per controller and then $100 to install. Going forward, we could add it to the specs. The big decision would be which brand. There's tens, if not hundreds of different companies out there producing them. They all have different standards. And so if it's something you truly wanted to do, you would want to settle on one so that we would have consistency throughout the city. And cost-wise, looking for grants would be appropriate for this. I've heard that there'll be a lot of grants now and a lot coming up for this kind of technology. Similar Acorn to the Dark Skies is it does not have the 7-pin connector, so the entire head would need to be replaced. The good thing is that Dark Sky model that I showed you does have the 7-pin connector, so you'd essentially be covering both bases with that change. The cost, the $1,350 that I gave you does include the unit, so that's covered in that. And then kind of similar going forward, we could add a new spec for that type of light. And similarly, you'd have to make a decision on brand to use. Covering all parts, both Acorn and Cobra Head. Communication is kind of the big issue with smart street lights. There's a couple options. There's cellular, which requires a subscription. It's susceptible to market conditions and based on contract terms. Radio is probably less costly over the life of the system. And something of note is CPU's working on a network. It's currently out for RFP. They're actually going to be doing electric and water meters that they can read from headquarters versus sending a meter reader out. To do that, they have to create a radio system or a system of communication over the county. So the city may be able to negotiate terms to jump in on their system. Not only would that benefit us for streetlights if we wanted to do something like this, but eventually moving over to the water meters, you know, getting away from what we have, going similar to what they have, it would be of interest. Cost, if we were to do the network from scratch, it'd be about $130 for fixture for 10 years. So based on the lights we have, it's about $455,000 or $45,500 per year. And then you have a subscription cost that varies depending on your features, but on average is about $10 per fixture. So based on our number of lights, it'd be about 35 grand per year. So kind of my final thoughts, city has approximately 3,500 lights. For dark skies, it seems fairly straightforward to implement. I'd recommend grants if we wanted to do retrofits of what we have. We'd likely need to include the smart light component because that's what's going to be attractive to the grant people. All our lights are already LED, so we can't really sell it that way, but the smart technology will make the grants look good. And then we'd have to follow up with CPU on the new fixture. For smart streetlights, I would recommend waiting till CPU builds out their communication network. It's going to be far cheaper to work with them than try to build our own. And then we ultimately need to address the lack of the 7-pin connector on the Acorns. And like I mentioned, that dark sky light would solve that issue. And then just kind of a last question is, does council want any more info on dark sky communities? So I'm done and happy to answer any questions.
Just a couple quick questions, Mark. Are there any other cities in Southwest Washington that are dark sky already? Because it seems like if they were, CPU might already have those lights. And
Not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure every city, I'm not sure about Vancouver because they do their own thing, but all the other cities pretty much use the same standard Acorn that we do. So if they've changed, it's been very recent, but I haven't heard that from anybody at this point.
And then a question on the smart lights. Is that suite of services an a la carte? So say we just wanted the emergency lighting and not the parking or not, can you pick and choose which of those you want and activate those later? So for example, you do a standard that says, okay, we're going to go dark sky. We're not going to retrofit as something gets damaged or a car runs into it. We're going to replace it with a street light, smart light, not turn on any of the functionality. And when we do turn on the functionality, can we pick and choose what we turn on?
Yeah, so definitely the features are a la carte. Different companies make different pieces of those features. So like the cameras, really that kind of control unit allows it to work, but it's a separate camera unit. And it's very similar on the other things. That controller allows it to all work, but you're picking up those individual units. The only answer I don't know is if there's like a minimum to the number of lights you have to have for that subscription. The average is the $10 per light per year, but I don't know if there's a minimum. It wasn't clear from our research if you had to have a minimum number of those.
Well, I guess my question, do you have to have the subscription when you put in the light, or can you put in the light and wait and turn on subscription when you have the minimum number, or is it got to
As long as you have the 7-pin connector, you can add that unit at any time. So I think just knowing how technology works, you wouldn't want to put it in and then let it sit there. It's probably a lot like, I'll give you the analogy, like your DVD player, Blu-ray player, you buy it 2 years later, it's, it's old and doesn't have the functionality. So, having the 7-pin connector, those units are actually fairly cheap. So having that's kind of, I think, the big lift.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Thank you. Thanks, Mark, for the presentation. I have to say, I did not know much about it, so I went down a rabbit hole, and I know a little bit more than I think I should know. But I do have a question because what kept coming up is this MPSAS, like the range for cities, for rural versus cities, as far as at what level the dark sky needs. Let me just see. So in a bigger city, the numbers would be lower, and rural is like 21, they were saying. Do we have have we done any kind of study on Battleground or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, and that's a good kind of point is, streetlights is only part of the issue. And so you would want to, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you'd want to go, that would be others. Because, streetlights definitely contribute to it. But, everyone that has a house light that shines up, everyone that has other things that light the sky, contribute to it. So I don't have a good, read on how much taking care of the streetlights would really contribute to improving it. I think you'd have to look at it more holistically to know for sure. Yeah.
Councilmember Kuipers?
Yes, thank you for the great information. If I understood on your slide correctly, you said that you would recommend that we align with the timing of the CPU build out. What is that? What is the timing? Do you know?
I don't. They're right now out for their RFQ. So essentially they're gathering proposals from different vendors.
Mhm.
And then they'll ultimately through that process, select somebody and start building that out. I assume it's going to take several years for that to happen. I don't have an exact timeline from them, but that would just be my best guess based on probably the amount of infrastructure that will have to go in to make that happen.
And do we have any associated ROI with this? Is there some cost savings or do we just have output?
There is the thing you always have an issue with in the Northwest is we get extremely cheap power. So the fact that our streetlights are already LED,
Mhm.
Switching to still LED, but on for slightly less, there's definitely an ROI there. Is it going to be great? Probably not. Again, that's just kind of the, hard part of living in an area where electricity is so cheap. You don't get as much benefit as another part of the country.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember DeRochers.
I just have a quick question. Is there any incentive for like developers to have a neighborhood that they build that's dark sky? Like, have you ever heard of a neighborhood doing that so that everybody that lives in the neighborhood can see the sky?
Yeah, I haven't heard, at least in our research, we didn't come across anything like that. Not to say you couldn't do it, but yeah, we didn't come across anything like that in our research.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Councilmember
You're
Frye.
fine. I'm very patient this evening. I was very excited to see about, that we were having this on the agenda, the dark sky technology. I'm all about, we already know, I've mentioned it several times, green space and including that, the night sky falls under that. And I think that would add another great characteristic for people to see what Battleground's doing and keeping its beautiful landscape available to its residents. I also know that they've done there's been some extensive research out there in regards to artificial lighting and the effects that has on wildlife, mammals, bugs, even actually flowers. And I was looking up that there is ordinances, other cities, there's a company out there. Actually, I think it's this company, Dark Skies, that does, if you go to their website, talks about ordinances and examples that, for your cities. So it's interesting that you had brought up Councilmember DeRochers about, possibly, unless I understood you correctly, about maybe making this an ordinance that developers we could have put on them. I definitely like the idea I am excited about this, but there's always that cost, right? And so I am interested about the grants and seeing if there would be anything out there.
Councilmember DeRochers.
Sorry, just another question about that. Is it in our code now that if a developer wanted to do their whole neighborhood like this, would it be allowed? So I think we have standards that they have to follow, correct?
Correct. There's nothing that I'm aware of. So typically the lighting codes are about polluting onto other people, not necessarily you can't do lighting, you can't not do darks. It's how much light comes off your property and either impacts the right of way or impacts your neighbors. So I don't think anything in our code would prevent somebody from doing that. The one issue we would have, and it's a fairly simple fix, is again, we have a standard street light Acorn that's not compliant and is our standard because it's the standard throughout the county. Again, an easy change. It's just an engineering standard. So with the swipe of a pen, we've got a new standard for that. But, not having the possibility of CPU maintaining for it, us having to keep inventory, those sorts of things, not impossible things to get past, just things to think about as you're thinking about it.
So when you're talking about the PUD developing their radio, I don't even know what it was called,
The communication network.
So if a developer wanted to do this now, is there a way that they could do it on their own, or do they have to do it with the city? Like, do we have to be a part of it?
I would think it would come through the city. I don't know that there's an easy way for a developer to do it on their own.
I didn't know if there was some, neighborhood system that they can install for HOA or something. don't
I
know.
mean, it's all, or there's both radio and cellular. So I mean, theoretically, there's ways to set up, like small cell that pretty low range. It's kind of neighborhood based. So I think you could get there. I think there's a lot of questions I would have if somebody came to me with that idea.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there's ways to get there.
Okay, we're not prohibiting anything like that.
No, I mean,
Thanks.
this kind of questions never come up before
Okay.
from a developer. So
Thank you.
Councilmember Overholzer?
Yes, sir. As much as I love the idea of being able to just look up anywhere in Battleground and see the night sky. Last time I checked, half the time it's cloud cover anyways. It to me, unless the county and CPU is talking about doing this as an overhaul for engineering and they could support that, I don't know if it makes necessary sense to me to overhaul just us and then ask public utility to make an exception just for little old Battleground while they're doing all the light changes for the entire county. I love the idea, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I know I'm upsetting our local photographers and everybody else that I see on. So, but for me, fiscally, it's got to make sense, and it has to be kind of working with the county. And as far as public utility, am I wrong in that assumption? I know you brought me this information, and we have to kind of give you some feedback on it, but
no, I mean, it's the question I have. So I'll give the example of our decorative Cobra head. It's not something that this PUD has as a standard. They have the kind of silverish gray one as their standard Cobra head. So those, like, we have some on Grace. When they go down, they have them in stock. They replace them. For our black Cobra head, we actually have to maintain a stock at operations. So when they go down, they still replace them for us. That feature is the same, but it requires us to have warehouse space essentially for them to have it. This would be a similar thing until PUD, and in our agreement, I believe there's a way to request if they'll make it a standard. So I have not talked to them about this one to obviously have this conversation first. So that could be a step that we take, is have some discussion with them about what they think about this kind of thing. But worst case, it would be treated similar to that black Cobra head where, yeah, they'll fix it for us, but we need to maintain the stock. And so it just, again, would be additional space that we'd be using at ops to, and these things don't go out frequently. So I'm not saying we would have to have 1,000 of them in stock, a lot of that will be dependent on how quick a turnaround there is. If you can get them in a week, you might have 5 of them in stock. If they take, half a year to get, you might have a bigger stock, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of questions I would have, but yes, I agree with your question. It makes sense to me, and stuff that would have to be researched.
I mean, I would love to further the conversation with the public utility department, say, hey, have you guys thought about this? Or is this something that we would be on our own about? To do a countywide, or at least in the unincorporated and urban or less than urban areas, would make sense. People would be able to see that night sky a little bit quicker with a turnaround, but yeah, that's my only recommendation is. see
So,
what they say.
yeah, I see two different things here, and I'm not real interested in a huge capital project or a huge capital spend. For me, what I see is we currently have lights that we're using the Acorns that are not compliant. So simply, we could change that standard for no cost, require developers to use the dark sky standard for no cost. Don't necessarily turn on smart street lights. I have some other issues potentially with that. So I don't see a cost to that. It's simply an engineering standard that we need to make sure that CPU is okay with. I think the next step that Councilmember Overholzer is talking about is a step that I'm not interested in pursuing either. It's simply having the standards on board so that when a neighborhood does go in, much like former Mayor Johnson testified earlier today about the standards we have for developments, if it's no increased cost to developer their neighborhood to put in these streetlights that have less light pollution, I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me. And then as they age out and Battleground drivers seem really good at taking out our streetlights. As they disappear under the bumper, you replace it with one that is compliant with the standard. And then the other suggestion I would make is that we advertise the fact that we put those on those Cobra lights, the shields. Because I think the reason we're not getting requests is people don't know that we do it. So that's how I see this moving forward personally.
But I just wanted to say that I'd be interested in us pursuing grants for this. So whatever's out there, you said that the technology, there may be grants for the technology portion of it. So I mean, definitely keep an eye out for that stuff for us.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested in doing it that way, obviously not doing the total cost up front. We just had light bulbs replaced a few years ago, so that doesn't really make sense. But I do like the idea of doing them as we go with the new developments, the new standards, and then looking to see if we can get grants and stuff to fix some of the older ones. Thank you.
Council, do we want to give direction? Are you good?
I like what you were saying. That was what I was thinking. I have my concerns with the whole other side of it, and just mine was only about the light pollution. And I know we've had citizens come in here even before I was on council, sitting out there and hearing them complain about, they buy the blackouts and it's still coming through their window. So that again, that was my only concern. So I like the idea of, what you had said about just bringing it in, as needed, one goes out, put this other one in, have developers come in with this new thing. Yeah, I agree.
Any other thoughts? Councilmember Overholzer?
Yeah, last thought. I agree with Mayor McCoy on that. If it, like you said, a swipe of a pen, change of an engineering standard for new development, no additional cost. So we're not adding anything to the price of the home for new home build. It does make sense. I mean, it would put us back to the standard, right? We wouldn't be out of compliance. We'd be in compliance with that. Is that correct? Or
With which standard?
with the dark sky?
Yeah, that if you had that alternate one, you'd be within the standard.
And then by upgrading or changing to the dark sky, that gives us the ability to upgrade to the smart feature later, correct?
Correct. The 7-pin connector is in that unit. So then you just have to add the controller unit.
Yeah, so I agree wholeheartedly with that idea. I just don't like the idea of looking at, we could change them all right now. I guess that's where I was coming from with that too. Capital, I don't necessarily want to invest a lot of capital into that, but if we're changing it and it doesn't cost us anything to make that change, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I still have the question with PUD and the maintenance of it, but I'll work that out with them and then report back, and we can change the standard is what I'm hearing.
Thanks, Mark.
I agree with that. Yeah, path forward, talking to CPU. Okay. Like next up is Lowry.
Good evening, council. Tonight, we're going to be going over 2024 as we have completed it. And I know we're a few months out from year end. However, these are actual numbers, which is unique because it takes us so long to close our books for the prior year. When we're looking at our funds, we have 22 separate funds, which you could think of these as 22 separate checkbooks. That's what governmental accounting is all about. It's called fund accounting, which is all sorts of fun for us in the finance department. Yes, I'm being very punny. And so when we're talking about the basis of accounting, we have two separate bases of accounting in our type of accounting that we do. So we have our governmental funds, which are presented on a modified accrual basis. What this means is that there's a period of availability that we have to monitor because When you're looking at governmental funds, you're looking at it more short-term than long-term, which is different from the private sector, which is more a full accrual basis, which you look at it long-term. So in modified accrual, you look at revenues when they are earned and collectible within a 60 to 90-day period at year end, and then expenses are recognized when they're incurred. You don't report on capital assets and liabilities except for on our governmental-wide financial statement, which is one of the first statements you see if you open up our annual report. And then our proprietary funds, you do see the capital assets and liabilities on a balance sheet. So it's more what you would typically see looking in the private sector. And then our annual state audit, we do receive 3 separate audits. We get an accountability audit, a federal single audit, as well as our financial statement audit. Our audit is set to begin April 21st. They originally were going to be here in about a week, which put it very, very short time frame for us, but this gives us a little bit of breathing room. They're short staffed, and so that helps us out. And when looking at overall in the state of Washington, out of the 823 reports that the state auditors issue, they only actually issue 54 letters that allows us to submit to the GFOA, the Governmental Finance Officers Association, at the highest level of reporting. So we choose to report at the level that we do. It's complicated. It's an almost 200-page report. It's looked at through a fine-tooth comb. So we're in the 6.6% of the state agencies in Washington that does this. So looking at our 2024 general fund tax revenue, this chart used to be a 3-legged stool. It used to be split almost equally at 33, 33, 33, and that stopped in 2021. So in 2021, we saw a significant increase in sales tax. So sales tax has become 45% of our overall meat and potatoes of your general fund, essentially. And then you have a property tax that's at about 29%, and then our utility taxes, which are at 26%. So looking at our sales tax for 2024, for our general regular sales tax, we brought in 5.6 million, which is a slight decrease from 2023 of 3.9%. That seems like a lot, but it really isn't when you look at the overall industry, and we'll get to that later in the slide deck to see what that means. When we're looking at the public safety sales tax as well as criminal justice, these are split sales tax with the county because of how they were enacted. So that sales tax is collected for the city or the county as a whole, and then a proportionate share comes back to the city for each of those. So we collected 368,000 in 2024 for public safety compared to 362,000 in 23. And then for criminal justice, 498,000 in 24 compared to 495,000 in 23. Between the two, it was a 1.1% increase, which tells you that the overall sales tax for the county was up slightly from the prior year. So it's just within the city that we're slightly decreased. Again, we'll talk about why in a couple slides. So looking at our transportation benefit district sales tax, we collected 657,000 compared to 681,000, which mirrors what you saw in the regular sales tax, a slight decrease because that is only in the city. It's slightly different on the decrease because not all transactions have the TBD sales tax applied to it, such as leasing of new vehicles. And the 36 brand new vehicles, 36 months. So the slight decrease is because of that, or the difference, excuse me. So when we look at our annual distribution of sales tax, you can see in 2021, we saw an increase of 33%. So we used to collect around $4 million from 2018 to 2020. And then we exceeded 5 million in 2021. And then we continued to increase. In 2022, we increased another 8%, and then 23 and almost 5%. And then this last year, we decreased slightly at 4%. When you look at the median over that time frame, it's 6.46%, and the average is an 8.7% increase. So this is what I was saying is even though we're slightly down from last year, we're still significantly higher than we were 4 years ago. Yes, Cherish.
I know I always bring this up, but can you explain to all of us why the rate increased? Why sales tax increased?
So it became destination based. And so all of and especially during COVID, everyone's spending habits changed. Folks stopped going outside of the city to shop. They shopped local, as well as more deliveries were made And so you saw some companies that you'd never seen before come on the higher level than they were even tracked before. So while they were de minimis before, now they're one of our most significant. I know you know who I'm talking about. I don't need to say it. So, and then looking at what we send to the state. So of the total sales tax we collect, 8.6% in the city. A very, very small percentage of that actually stays in the city of Battle Ground. We sent approximately 43 million to the state of Washington. We sent 4.6 million to C-Tran. And then to the county, they collect the mental health, criminal, as well as their public safety sales tax at 657,000. The county general, 990,000, and then us with the TBD at 657, and then the 5.6 million. So when you look at this, the total gross receipts in the city of Battle Ground is approximately $660 million. Which is, it's astounding when you look at that compared to what it was 4 years ago. So trade is good in Battle Ground. So looking at which industries we're actually collecting that from, if you look in a comparison to 23 to 24, you can see that retail continues to be the highest collector for the city, which is not shocking considering our large businesses in town. And then when you look at construction's an interesting one to look at, because if you look down at the bottom, from 2016 to 2020, we averaged a collection of 613,000 in this industry. And then from 21 to 24, that jumped to over 1 million. And so that's an increase of 72%. So in that 21 period, we saw a significant increase in the cost of doing business, both on our public works side of contracting for work, as well as on the private side. Construction just became very expensive, and it hasn't stopped. It was originally said to be supply and demand, the cost of getting the supplies and why it was costing more to get them, the limited staff, and it's just continued to be a thing even past COVID. Oh, I will also point out food services. Food services also used to be significantly less. And with COVID, we actually saw an increase. So while we had a few businesses that closed during COVID, we actually saw some that drastically increased. So people like to eat in Battle Ground. So looking at our development activity, we saw an astounding increase in single family residential. We issued 284 permits compared to 182 in 23. This was unexpected given the mortgage rate environment right now. We expected that, well, we really didn't know. We didn't have that crystal ball to know what it was going to do for us. We anticipated that we would see a decrease in this as well as the sale of homes, but we actually saw the opposite of that, which just goes to show you can't know the future until it happens. Multifamily, we didn't do any new permits in 24 compared to the 2 we did last year in 23. And then looking at commercial permits for new commercial, this isn't tenant improvements or building improvements, but actual new businesses. We had 4 compared to 7. So what does that mean for money? So for our permanent revenue, we got collected 1.3 million compared to 890,000. Looking at development review, so this is what happens before the subdivisions go into play. We collected 330 compared to 416, which tells you that less subdivisions are in the pipeline. So that has decreased. And then looking at park impact fees, we collected 1.2 million compared to 1.1 million. Building plan checks, this was significant as well, 902,000 compared to 496,000. Transportation impact fees, we collected 775,000. I will say a portion of this. So when these developments go into play, if they build something that's in our transportation plan, they're given a portion credit and they're called credits. And then they use those to offset their impact fees on a single family home. So it's a credit, cash in the bank. They issue us or give us a letter. We then reduce the balance. And so of that, we issued 455,000 in credits and then 303,000 were used. And in case you're curious, those credits were related to Rasmussen, that write in, write out. So overall, 4.5 million for development activity for the governmental side of the house, which is a 22% increase from 23. Looking at development activity for our proprietary funds. So this is when, Yes.
I did want to ask a question about the last slide real quick. With the development review being down, again, less development in the pipeline. Will we per se expect permit revenue to then drop next year?
Not necessarily, because some of these subdivisions are in play for a number of years before they actually start building. So it doesn't necessarily correlate. I've seen this high and then permits are low. So it depends on the developer and moving it through the process. And if it makes sense, and I'll let Kristen correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Thank you.
So looking at, again, what it means for our utility systems. So water system development fees collected 978,000 compared to 623,000 in 23. We do operate 6,940 accounts, which is essentially the connections. And then looking at our sewer system development fees, 4.4 million. Again, this is where we issue SDC credits, and we issued 160,000 in credits. However, none of those were used in 24. And we have 7,543 sewer connections. And then looking at our storm drainage system, we collected $130,000 in system development fees compared to 84,000 in 23. And we have 7,837 accounts. This one is also one to keep in mind. That's how many households and or businesses we have in the city, because every parcel that's in the city that has a building of impervious surface is charged a storm drainage fee. So when folks annex in, they then start getting the storm drainage fee. They stop paying the county and start paying us. Are there any questions about this portion of development activity?
Where's that paid? The drainage fee development? I mean, you say if somebody annexes in, then they stop paying the county, start paying us. How do they pay us? In what manner?
They pay us through the utility billing system. So they get added. So my utility billing clerk gets notified of the annexation, and then a letter goes out, and then they start getting a bill. And then the county is notified through the normal annexation process, and they stop the storm drainage fee, or they call it a clean water fee. Not a storm drainage fee, but that's what stops with the county. Okay. So looking at contributed capital. So again, when we have a development that goes into play, all of that infrastructure that was built by those developers gets to be the cities, and we get to maintain it, and we offset it in our books. We book it as an asset, and then we put a dollar amount to that. And so for streets, we were given $3.2 million worth of streets, storm drainage, 1.6 million, water, 1.2 million, and sewer, 1.2 million. Now, keep in mind, these systems, unless they're part of the credit piece, this isn't stuff that's in our plan. This is stuff that's getting added outside of our plan, and that's why they're not getting credits for it. So like the regular roads in a subdivision, that's not something that we use for general commuting of our main, what are they called? Laterals. Not laterals. Local streets, thank you. And so that's what these are. So bonus. So overall 7.2 million. So our interest income continues to be record setting. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to see this again in my lifetime. And if we do, then great. So 4.2 million across all of our funds compared to 3.3 million in 23. So our average earnings across all the funds is 4.35%. Looking at our capital projects, so we have $3.5 million, and this is again the governmental side of the house. We have 34 different projects in various stages. It is amazing to me how many projects this city gets through with the staff that we have. I know it seems like a lot of times these take a long time to get off the ground, but truly it's astounding. If you saw our spreadsheets, you would understand when I say that, because all of these have about 2 to 3 different funding sources. So you're talking grants, you're talking local funds, various portions of local funds, and Mark and his team do an excellent job getting us through those processes. So we had 584,000 for the police station HVAC, for Northwest First Street, 524,000, Southwest Eaton, 508,000. Those are some of the significant projects that we got off the ground this last year in 24. And again, I only gave you a small snippet of what we did. but these were the significant ones. Looking at our proprietary funds, we spent $4.6 million. Again, this is 10 additional projects. And when I say capital projects, I'm not talking about your street preservation or your repairs. These are things that are new or something that is being done on an asset that's going to extend the life. That's what we mean by capital projects. So street preservation or any of the other minor repair projects, if a pipe blows and they have to fix it, is not part of this. That's a different line item. So for 92nd Avenue, we spent 1.3 million. And then for the EQ Basin, 1.2 million, well number 6, 1.1 million, and then 723,000 for the water reservoir. All of these are being funded by various portions of ARPA, so the American Rescue Plan Act, which is fantastic. That means that our ratepayers are not bearing the burden of these projects. Yes.
And are we on time for getting these completed before the ARPA timer runs out? We all confident on that?
I am told yes. So we were able to obligate all of them before the deadline, which is the first deadline. That was December 31st. So we're good with that deadline. The second deadline is December 31st of 2026. As these are already all in the construction phase, we will have them done.
Yeah, I mean, 2 of those on the list are done. The pump station will be done about mid-year and the reservoir should be done by the end of the year, early next year. So they're all well on their way.
And I think there's another point to be made on this slide, and that is the ARPA funds were used for capital projects and not continuing repeating labor, which you're seeing a lot of cities have an issue with their budgets, because when you get one-time money, using it for one-time projects is part of the reason why we're in as good a shape as we are. So that's an attaboy to both staff and councils.
And for the folks that are new on council, by using our ARPA funds for this, we save ratepayers about 16% in rate increases because we don't have to use the local rate increases to fund these. So it's fantastic. As a finance person, I highly commend you all for using it in this manner. So for street preservation, again, this is the non-capital portion. Again, more projects that our engineering staff does manage. We had 1.2 million in chip seal, mill and fill markings compared to 1.3 million in 23. As you recall, we are having a carryover of this work because of what we've discussed previously that we won't get into now, but a portion of that work is going to be in 25. So there will be more preservation work this year than last year. And then we did also have a state grant that helped pay for a portion of that work. And then for ADA ramp, it was 400,000 compared to 514,000 in 23. And looking at our state and federal grants, again, this is something that we get audited on, and we have a lot of them, and they can get very tedious, which it's free money, which is great, but it's not necessarily always free. For our direct federal grants, we had 2.7 million. That includes the COPS hiring grant as well as the COPS technology grant. Again, for those that aren't aware, we helped the Battleground School District put in some radio repeaters to assist with first responders to get there quicker because of some cellular issues in the buildings. And then also it paid for a portion of our second SRO officer that did end this last year. And then our drug-free communities grant, it was our final year of funding this last year. So that is now complete and done. And then a portion of that, or the larger portion, was the ARPA funds. Our indirect federal grants passed through the state, 1.9 million. We had some transportation projects, the Target Zero, as well as the 92nd Avenue that was passed through the state. And then just state grants, we got 1.4 million, again, transportation projects, planning, a lot of our comp plan, middle housing, as well as climate change and the old town are being funded through grants, which is fantastic that the state is helping us pay for the consultant costs that come along with that. And then we also had some judicial grants to help assist with the public defenders, interpreter services. And Carol was actually instrumental in getting us those grants and advocating for local jurisdictions to get them, or the smaller municipalities versus just the larger courts. Looking at our general fund overall revenues, we budgeted 27.2 million and we actually took in 28.4 million. A large portion of that increase was due to the increased permit activity. Looking at our expenditures, we do have 13 different divisions that the general fund pays for. So our budget was 31.9 million and our actual was 26.3 million. And then looking at the composition of our general fund revenues, taxes does make up 50.1% of that. And then charges for goods and services, 21.5%. That's our second largest. That does include the indirect cost allocation. So what that means is a lot of our general fund departments are support departments. Like my department would not exist if it weren't for the rest of the divisions in the city, as well as executive, HR, communications. And so what we do is we take and we allocate those costs out to the different funds that we support and programs, and then those funds recoup and pay back to the general fund. Looking at our general fund expenditures, there's two different slides for this because there was just too many. Everyone was within their budget. I'm not going to go through these individually. I'll send these out to everybody, but you can just see the left side, the blue side is budget, the red side is actual. And again, those transfers out is a significant difference just due to the fact that we budget out of the general fund to reimburse the water and sewer fund for the ARPA projects. And so that's why that was a large difference, because the project wasn't completed or projects weren't completed. And then looking at our real estate excise tax revenue, again, this was a little bit shocking to me just because of the mortgage rate environment. We collected 1.6 million compared to 1.4 million in 23. And this kind of gives you an overall history of what REIT has done. Again, 21 and 22, that was when mortgage rates were very low. And so you saw a lot of home sales happening. If you look at year over year, the percent, that is what the percentage is down at the bottom, 16%. And then we're at about a 16% increase from the prior year. So we're doing very well in REIT and continue to do so. Again, crystal ball can't tell me if this will continue or not, but we shall see. Looking at our street fund, our budget was 3.9 million. Our actual was 4.1 million. So we actually brought in more revenue. That is due to the fact that we did not budget for the grant. We had planned on paying for the additional work out of local funds, hoping we would get the grant. We got the grant, so that's why the revenues are higher than what we budgeted for. Expenditures, 3.5 million, so it's 70.1% budget to actual. Again, that's due to the work that's carrying over to 25. Looking at our parks fund, we collected 105.5% budget to actual. We had a significant increase in our rentals of the community center. They brought in 260,000 and we had only budgeted, I believe it was 85,000. So they did quite well. And then looking at our parks expenditures, we're at 91.4% budget to actual. Looking at our storm drainage fund, we collected 106.3% budget to actual. Again, this is due to some grant revenue that was unanticipated. And then looking at our storm drainage expenditures, we're at 70.1%. And then for our water fund, 105.5% budget to actual for our revenue, and then expenditures, 91.4%. And then looking at our sewer fund, we're at 80%, 86% budget to actual for our revenue. And this is due again to the 92nd Avenue. We had budgeted for the full project to be funded by the grant, and we don't have the offsetting expenditures. So that's why it's less than what the budget is. And looking at our expenditures, 78.6%, again, due to the capital project that's still ongoing. Looking at our debt outstanding, if you look at our auditors this last year actually commented how little debt we have and in what good shape we were as far as in comparison to other cities they have seen. So we have 8.7 million in total overall debt. Again, very low. And then looking at our cash and investments, the majority of our funds are at LGIP, and then county pool 10% investments, like long-term investments that we do ourselves. We locked in some 5% 5-year bonds, which is fantastic. So even if things start to go down, we'll still have a portion that we're going to be collecting some funds from. And then of the dollar amounts that are shown, the majority are restricted or committed for specific purposes. Again, of those 22 funds we present, all but the general fund have very specific restrictions and are collected for a purpose. And then in the general fund, we have restrictions as well and some commitments. With that, is there any questions?
Chime in, please.
No questions, just thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, same. No questions at this time. I'm still learning a lot, but it was very informative, very helpful, and lots to be proud of. Good work. Wow. And I know it doesn't happen in 1 year, but nice. It's exciting.
Okay, well, you stunned everybody with too many numbers.
Yes.
Good strategy. I believe you're next on deck too.
I am. So last council meeting, we discussed me preparing an ordinance for you related to our salary commission. So before you is ordinance 25-03, an ordinance amending Battleground Municipal Code Title II Administration and Personnel, Chapter 2.86 Salary Commission, Section 2.86030 Duties, Section 2.86040 Open Meetings. What this does is it takes out the requirement for the Salary Commission to hold 2 formal public hearings, lessening the administrative burden upon that, but then also added a requirement that every meeting that they have public comment availability. So folks can still come and review and listen and comment to the Salary Commission. And at this point, we would just recommend setting a public hearing if the council is so inclined.
Before we open it for a motion, could we get the title read, please?
Ordinance number 2025-03, an ordinance amending Battleground Municipal Code Title II Administration and Personnel, Chapter 2.86 Salary Commission, Section 2.86.030 Duties, Section 2.86.040 Open Meetings.
All right. I move to set a public hearing for the April 21st regular city council meeting to hear public testimony on ordinance number 2025-03.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Overholzer, second by Councilmember Ferrer. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question about the ordinance.
Shoot.
Because I know that I'm all in favor of the salary commission and, giving them the duties to do this. My concern is because I know it doesn't even come before council. So when would be the time for a council member to bring forward a concern that, like, for example, I don't think that we on council should get insurance. So when would be the time for me as a council member to present that, since this is a salary commission? It's fully, up to them.
And so with that, historically, the commission has done interview questions or written questions to each of the council members. And at that time, one of the questions is about the health benefits. And I know they read that and they see that.
Okay.
And so that would be the appropriate time. It's kind of like your chance to give input if you think you're underpaid, overpaid, if you feel that it's too much, too less. They do ask all of those questions, and they've asked me to get that every year. So that would be the
Appreciate that.
time.
Thank you. I was not aware of that process. Thank you.
Clarification on her question. Are they allowed to take away things?
So and when it is a decrease, so say they removed it, it would not take effect for anyone who currently is sitting on council that has it. It would take effect the next election period. There's specific language written into the ordinance about increases and decreases. Increases can happen at any time, decreases cannot, and there's specific processes as part of that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, there is a motion on the floor to set the public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Brings us to administrative reports. Do we have anything this evening?
No administrative reports tonight.
And that brings us to council communications. Any council member communications this evening?
I just have one.
Sure.
I wanted to congratulate the police force. I know Chief Flynn isn't here, but you guys have all been working really hard with doing interviews. And it looks like over the last staff report that we have 2 more hires that hopefully will start April 1st, which will get us back to capacity, correct? Or is that the overhires?
Oh, boy.
We can
Did-
officially
I opened the
say,
can of worms, I know.
no, we
but-
could officially say we were fully staffed for about 2 hours.
Oh, did I?
We did have a resignation, but we did
Ah,
fill those last 2 spots.
You got the 2 spots filled?
Yes.
And then you had some more interviews that just happened last week, right? Oh, good. Very good. Excellent. Yeah, and now to parrot our deputy mayor, who I'm not sure if he'll pipe in on this, but we are still continuing to work towards those 2 overhires, correct? That, I mean, we're not there yet, I know, but it's like a constant recruitment process for the police, isn't it? Yeah, so thank you for the efforts. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other council member communications? Okay. Pursuant to RCW 42.30.110.1B, the city council will enter an executive session to consider selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration will cause a likelihood of increased price. Session will last 20 minutes commencing. Let's take a 5-minute break at 8:32. And then ending at 8:52 with possible action to follow. 8:52, there will be no action taken. On Friday, March 21st, a special meeting will begin at 9 a.m. to allow council members to attend the city council retreat. The retreat will be held in City Hall Suite 154, located on the first floor to northeast corner of the building. An agenda will be posted and members of the public are welcome to attend. Public comment will not be taken at this meeting. The next regular city council meeting will be held Monday, April 7th at 7 p.m.